to start us off, Matt, maybe can you walk us through what you're seeing today, specifically around Kevin Warsh, and I want you to kind of go through the history as well. I think you've got a couple of items you want to go through there as you go through each of the Fed
Yep.
nominees.
Yep. So, I leaving our audience members, all the handful of them who tend to follow us over the course of the year or so that Cameron and I have been doing this, we like to bring in history, go to the source materials if we can, whenever we can, to look for footing, and then bring that background into like what we're living in the present moment. So the textbook on central banking, if you think of, if there is one, how to pick a central banker. If you've ever heard of the Bank of England governor Walter Bagehot, there's a column written under his pseudonym still in the Economist magazine. I haven't read it in years, just given the perspective. I've shifted to other primary sources. But in this book, Lombard Street, that describes the Bank of England, a fractional reserve monetary system, all of that, how it works. Um, there is a chapter 8 specifically, that goes into, and it's titled "The Governance of the Bank of England," and he spends a lot of time pigeonholing down on what makes a good governor for the executive of the central bank. And so that's, really what I see what we're going through here today in present times. And then I'll do a comparison with, some of the text he wrote on prior Fed chairs to see, what he may have thought about the banking governance decisions that we've made over the prior 40 years. All right. So to start, for background, from Badgett's perspective, identifying an individual for this job is one of the most important things for a country, a civilizational, group of people operating as a cohesive society. So I like this quote here, just to encircle the concept we're going after. Like, managing the cash reserve of the country is a as precious deposit as any set of men can have the care of. So it tells you, like, this is one of the most important roles, like putting someone in. If you do this job right, um, things generally tend to work well. If you do it wrong, and there's like an infinite number of bad ways to make a poor selection here. Um, Generally, bad things can happen when you debauch the society's money, as the famous Keynes quote goes that we've talked about before. But in general, just first isolating, what are you looking for when you go after a central bank executive? Um, he goes after some, like, what are the wrong things to do, and I think what stands out is you don't want someone necessarily older, wealthier, strongman type of background. I'll get into that in a second. He actually recommends someone who skews younger. And I think, and the reason for that is they have a forward-looking time horizon of 20 years. Is kind of the advantage he's looking for. Someone who can think, what we would all view as medium or long term. So they're not so focused on, the present time, or shortened lifespans in front of them, protecting existing assets or power structures. They have some longevity in front of them. This is where I think Kevin Warsh's background comes in. He was one of the youngest Fed Board of Governors ever, as far as my knowledge goes, when he was nominated in 2006 to serve as a FOMC governor under the George W. Bush second administration. And he lasted until 2011. I think there were some, maybe some political differences or philosophical difference between his views and the way he saw the board and the Fed moving in the post GFC environment. And I think if there's one thing you can take away here, this kind of represents a shift, if you think about it, from the way that the Fed has operated over, not just the 2010s and what we saw in terms of QE, um, public money expansion, all of that. Um, it goes back even further, in my opinion, to the 1980s and decisions that were made and how we structured and made governance decisions as far as the executive at the Federal Reserve for the United States. So we'll get into that in a second. But what I think has happened, just to throw this out there, this seems like Kevin Warsh was probably the optimal pick all along. Like he had everything you'd look for, and I'll go into that from the Badgett checklist. He also had the experience at the Fed Board of Governors as well for 5 years. He's on the younger end, which is a good thing from the Walter Bagehot perspective. Um, and I think the headlines we've seen now that we have this news Friday morning, the push of Kevin Hassett for Fed chair, since basically May, June last year when those kind of rumors started to float, and basically the way I view that is that was just some chum thrown in the water to throw the scent off of basically a year of, which would just be called like beating up Kevin Warsh as your intended nominee all along, or maybe a short list, um, as a kind of a distraction tactic. So now that he's proposed for Fed chair, he has to go through Senate confirmation and approval. Um, that process can take place in a shortened time frame, weeks, maybe a month or two at most, but we have a hard deadline of May to fill this seat. So the political infighting around this highly important seat, it gets compressed, and basically you shielded Kevin Warsh from all of that politicization, the hyperpolarization, basically the challenge between the legacy incumbents who we described last week, talking about Davos in the aftermath, representing kind of the globalist post World War II order. And on the flip side of that, you've got kind of the American sovereigntist movement, which is paired up by other sovereigntist movements popping up, across countries around the globe, by the week now, it seems. Basically, Kevin Hassett served his job, in my opinion, as the decoy very well. So
Yeah, I thought that.
props to Kevin Hassett. He did his job, but if you look at the checklist, he doesn't fill the boxes of what you're looking for out of the ideal candidate. So Cameron, go ahead and I'll talk about that short
I
list.
was just gonna say from my perspective, right, I thought the worst nomination came out of complete left field for me. I was not aware he was even in the running, right? So I
Oh, he was on, yeah. If you follow Polymarket, he went down as low as 8% or like single digits, and then he shot back up. But yeah, I think the key here is from a tactical standpoint that the Trump definitely got the market, the media, everybody involved to bite on the bait that was Kevin Hassett. So
absolutely.
good job. So the factors you're looking for out of the executive to run the central bank and Walter Bagehot's perspective, number one, top talent of their generational cohort when it comes to banking. This is Kevin Warsh. Like he's got a background, I want to say undergrad Stanford, um, JD from Harvard, I believe, was on the board of governors by like his late 30s, served 5 years. That 2011 was 14 years ago. So this is a guy probably in his 50s now, if I'm just guessing age, mid 50s. That's definitely a situation where you have 10 to 20 years of horizon in front of you. You're looking for age, and then health is the other thing. We don't have HIPAA records or anything like that, but you're assuming health checks out. That's great. You want someone no longer actively involved in the banking industry, but they come from it or they have the relationships, so that you don't get the conflict of interest or managing to your own book of business, stuff like that. So you're not throwing out favors. You're really representing the system from the framework itself, working for the interest of the system, everybody's mutual benefit, as far as focusing on choosing winners and losers, as someone weaker in this role would be pressured to do. you want experience and a network with merchants and industry. So you're kind of like understanding the core business, who are the clients to lend to, what's going on in the economy. But you're more of a jack of all trades, master of none, is what you really want to be. Um, and then Badgett calls this out. You want someone with lots of leisure time, like a surplus of personal capital, and deployed with their capital into basically assets that give them a low risk of ruin. They're not into speculations. They're not, making bets. You've never seen, as far as I know, Kevin Warsh come out as far as like you see with Bill Ackman coming out as taking activist plays. To my knowledge, over the last 10, 15 years, I haven't seen a headline where Kevin Warsh is, throwing private capital into a political venture or, involved in some deal. So from what you'd look for to Walter Bagehot as your guide, this looks like a good pick to me. Now, I'm going to go through that same chapter as I'm reading this. I reread it this morning. I'm going to go over some things that Bagehot warned about that are, from his perspective, interpreted in a modern day. You would say this is not a good way to go as far as the the people put in roles, in governance roles, to basically manage your civilization's cash reserve. And let's just go to this one. Alan Greenspan, widely known as, like, people look up to him as like the goat of the Fed, central banking. He served as chairman for about 20 years under, let's see, Reagan, George Bush one, Bill Clinton, George Bush two. So four presidents, I believe, if I'm running that correctly. So he spanned Republicans, Democrats, everybody, the whole uniparty in Washington D.C. This was their guy. But if you really think about it, I want to go through what Bagehot wrote. When you put, what do you call it, just like a power figure in charge who runs this thing for the long term, the risks that arise. So I'll go to this quote. A permanent governor of the Bank of England would be one of the greatest men in England. He would be a little monarch in the city. He would be far greater than the Lord Mayor. He would be the personal embodiment of the bank. He would be constantly clothed with an almost indefinite prestige. Everybody in business would bow down before him and try to stand well with him, for he might, in a panic, be able to save almost anyone he liked and to ruin almost anyone he liked. And it goes on from that. Like, basically, you had to curry to the favor of this great man. Um, he's basically the be all and end all of money. We could go through the Time magazine cover. I think from the pull that up, Cameron. We don't have this fast of chops put it up, but now that I'm thinking of this, there was a Time magazine cover from like the Asian financial crisis of the late '90s. 1998 is when it really hit its head. But you got, I think this was the era where we got that Time magazine cover where it says like Masters of the Universe, stuff like that. It's basically just worship of like Alan Greenspan, central bankers. Like, these are the magical emperors who are the ones who are going to save us from any monetary crisis. That's really the way this operated. Bagehot warned against this, but I think in hindsight, for 20 years, this was a mission critical problem of somewhere where, in my opinion, the United States, from a domestic monetary policy standpoint, veered like tremendously off course. And now we're still living with the repercussions of cleaning this up as of today. All of these things Bagehot says to watch out for, really, they come true. So I think it as the historical record kind of gets updated, we think about it. I think we'll look back on this with clearer eyes as time gives more opportunity to reflect on what we just went through, in at least like my lifetime to date, roughly 40 years in. All right, next one, another quote. I'll bring this up for Ben Bernanke, who served as chair after Alan Greenspan, 2006 to 2014. Notably, I've got him right behind the Brookings Institution. You'll see, for the last few years, Ben Bernanke taking these roles with think tanks in Washington, D.C., going after their prestige. I've seen him be I've seen him on as a advisor to Citadel Securities, for example. They'll have him on to talk with closed door presentations about what's going on in the financial system. I think it goes case in point. And now let's go to another Walter Bagehot quote. I'm throwing some punches here today, so these might come back to me as challenges, but I think the historical record will back me up here. So Walter Bagehot gives a warning about putting an executive in charge to run governance of your central bank. Um, saying a large bank is exactly the place where a vain and shallow person in authority, if he be a man of gravity and method, as such men often are, may do infinite evil in no long time and before he is detected. So what he gets at here, this belief, this savior complex, I've been studying this my whole life. I'm the man for this job. We need to do these drastic measures, X, Y, and Z. Um, like basically a hero complex, which is very close or adjacent to ego and vanity and the desire to fit in. I think with basically elitism as it operates out of Washington D.C. and New York City as power centers. I think those risks are the exact thing that Bagehot calls out. So with these measures we've taken in the post 2008 GFC to date, massive QE, currency debasement, I mean, everything we've seen from basically the um, starting with the Alan Greenspan Fed, but then really um, stepped up to crisis level policies with Bernanke and Janet Yellen's term as the executive at the head of the central bank. I believe what we saw with Jerome Powell was an approach to unwind those policies and shift us back on course. And my hope is that this, broader movement we're looking at to basically revalue sovereignty, protect and conserve your nation state's cash reserve. I'm hopeful that this Kevin Warsh pick is a pivot to a better direction. Which, if you go to Washington D.C., anybody involved in central banking, um, banking in general, policy, they'll they'll hold up Walter Bagehot's Lombard Street as the Bible. And what I'm asking for here is let's all read it. Let's go back to basics here. So I think that's where we're at.